And thanks, AJ, for that. So yeah, we have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. There are two ways for you to ask questions. At the bottom of the Zoom screen, there is a button that says Q&A. You can type your question into there. Alternatively, you can type it into the chat box and we can get those questions answered for you. AJ, we did get a question from one of our attendees, and the question was, is there a slide deck that they can view on the information you covered? And I think that question came through when you were talking about the kind of 4 different buckets of businesses and kind of where businesses are in that. And so maybe, is there somewhere you can point them to, or is there a slide we can get for them?
Absolutely. I'll send that over. Just let me know. Should I direct it to you and then onwards?
Yeah, and then we'll get it out to in our newsletter.
And this is Therese. I have a slide deck as well, but what I would say is my firm, Barnes and Thornburg, right on the website, it's btlaw.com. So Barnes and Thornburg, btlaw.com has an entire COVID page dedicated to where you can click and get access to a bunch of resources. And because this is changing daily, it's a great place to go and get the most updated information.
Great. And AJ, you mentioned an email where people could reach out to you should they need any support. What was that email again?
Absolutely. That email is COVID pro bono, PROBONO, at em3law.com.
And that's for small businesses to get answers right now, right?
Yeah, we've started our pro bono program specific to COVID-19 to intake 10 companies a month, at least through the end of this year, in order to help them answer some initial questions that they may be encountering during this time.
Great. I'm going to just include that in there. And would it be okay with you if we include that information in our newsletter, just as a resource for small businesses that may be struggling right now?
Absolutely. That's the whole purpose.
Great.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Cool. So let me see. I've included both of those links in the chat box, which should have gone to all panelists and attendees. I hope you're able to see those. And so now we'll open it up to questions from the community. Do we have any specific questions for AJ on the financial aspects of and financial considerations, or for Therese on the employment law side? AJ, I do have a question while our audience is potentially typing out their questions. You mentioned that there were different categories of businesses, and one of the questions I had was, how do you know if you were healthy before COVID? How can a business think through that decision-making process? Was I healthy before? Am I going to make it through? Or was I teetering and I probably need to use this time to reevaluate where I'm going?
You know, oftentimes I think it's one of those things that sometimes we may not recognize, you know, kind of just absent the need of recognizing it. In this case, you know, it's really thinking about what your cash flow was looking like. Was it were your operations continuing upwards, or were your revenues in a downward trajectory? You know, what your reports to your lenders were looking like, and what the tenor of that conversation was pre-COVID-19. The other way you can really get a sense is what is the lender doing at this point in respect of your credit? Are you falling into that category where you've already received a reservation of rights? Are you know, what sort of tenor of those conversations is going on? And I think those are probably the best ways of understanding it, you know, where you would fall in those categories.
And would their lender be the best person to kind of help them think through that if they have a banker or a line of credit or something like that?
I think it's a combination of folks. It's certainly when you're responding to the lender. Now, you just kind of keep in mind, I mentioned on a few occasions that there are going to be some, you know, some litigated issues that will be coming up. And it's important when you make responses to your lender that you think through all of those issues, right? So if you're claiming, so for example, if you're claiming there has been no material adverse change or no force majeure in effect on a contract with a supplier, but then you're claiming that the opposite of that with your lender, that could be problematic. So you want to think through your communications and what trigger points you use. So if your lender says, well, we fear that there's been a material adverse change in the condition of your company, that you think through how to articulate a response there. And so certainly I think counsel, your law firms can help in that regard. And then in terms of the financial metrics, you know, those are typically outside consultants. Outside consultants are preferable to lenders because they start to feel more confident in the credit when they feel like they have eyes and ears involved with the company on a regular basis and is helping them make a objective decision. So I think it's a combination of those two.
Gotcha. So we have a question from our audience here. If you're an essential worker and the employer asks you to stay at the office location for other emergencies, are they obligated to pay you for the time that there is no emergency, such as an urgent care? So if they ask you to work from 8 to 5, but you only see one emergency and the hospital only pays you for treating the one patient, do they have the right to ask you to stay the whole day? So I don't, maybe Therese, is that a question for you or Ajay?
My question, but I don't see the question.
It's in the Q&A box. I can put it in the chat box for you there.
Oh, let me see. Okay.
There you go.
So the answer is it depends, but medical office is doing this. Okay. The answer is it depends. I see the Q&A. But it depends. I need more facts, but more likely than not, if you are not able to leave the premises, you have to be paid. Again, that's a very high level, general, not having many facts in front of me answer.
Looks like we have a follow-up to that.
No, I don't think so.
Okay, thanks. Okay. Any other questions? Therese, can you give us some guidance on anything that you may have seen related to healthcare workers in general? I know this is a question that has come up more often than once, which is I'm a healthcare worker and I have concerns about my working conditions. And I don't feel like I'm adequately protected. What can I do about that? Or am I just at the mercy of my management?
Yeah, interestingly enough, I advise the employer, not the employee.
Right.
But
or you can take it, on the flip side of that,
right.
if you're an employer getting those questions, because some of the individuals on this call do run clinics. And so I know that there are, they may potentially have employees that are in that situation.
Right. So with respect to the Family First Act, it goes back to that first, question. First of all, that providers are going to be exempt from that. The healthcare providers are going to be exempt. So obviously, it is in everyone's best interest to protect your employees to the extent that you can. So assuming the employer is doing that, I mean, if the question is, I'm afraid, right? If that's the question, we're back to that first slide, which is if the employer's actively doing all they can do to protect you, and you are a healthcare provider that falls under the excluded from the sick pay and the expanded family leave, we go back to regular employment law, right? Which is you can't just not show up for work without a valid reason that is protected under the law.
Thank you. Any other questions on that? Or any other topics related to labor and employment or financing a business during this time? All right, well, we are nearing the end of the hour. So we will go ahead and close out our webinar for today. If you are not already subscribed to the USICOC newsletter, I encourage all of you to subscribe to that newsletter. You can get up-to-date COVID-19 related business information there. We send out 2 newsletters a week on COVID-19 resources and updates and news, law, and other information for small businesses to consider. And also in that newsletter, you can get an up-to-date listing of all of our webinars. We do have another webinar happening tomorrow. That webinar is going to be on tax implications and financial implications for businesses. That's being provided by My Tax Filer. And it's a Saturday session because we recognize that some of you run businesses Monday to Friday, and then Saturday may be one of the few days you have. So that's going to be on a Saturday. On Monday morning at 10 a.m., we're hosting Key Coker. Key is the president of BBVA Bank, and he will be giving us an update on the Paycheck Protection Program, as well as the other lending opportunities that are coming through banks during COVID-19. He'll also be offering tips on things that you can do in terms of working with your bank or lender during this time. So join us for that. On Wednesday at noon, we will be having a webinar on marketing, how you can start preparing your business from a marketing standpoint to come out strong on the other side of COVID-19. And then finally, we have a webinar next Friday on more legal topics, primarily for those in the hospitality and multi-tenant industry, and then also on wills and trusts, because that's been a big question for a lot of people. With the high infection rate, unfortunately, people are wondering, do I have my affairs in order in case I succumb to this illness? So with that, I want to thank all of you. I think Therese wanted to add one more thing before we close out, but I want to thank all of you from the chamber, and I'm going to hand it over to Therese, and then when she is finished, we will close out. And then if you want to listen to this webinar again, if you need to go back and review some of the tidbits, I also wanted to add that this webinar will be uploaded to the Chamber's YouTube channel. You can Google YouTube and then in the search box type USICOC. All the webinars are listed there. And you can join us for that. You can review all of the webinars, and this one will be uploaded this evening for you to access. So Therese, I'm going to hand it back over to you, and then thank you all for joining us. And Therese, it's all yours.
All right, thanks. And I'm sorry, I should have said this, it's been a little bit more clear. So outside of the Family First Act, you have your regular Americans with Disabilities Act and other laws that are applicable in the workplace. So let's say someone has a condition that would make being around, a suppressed immune system, and therefore being around, if you're a healthcare provider who's around people who have COVID, you're at heightened risk. One could make the argument that you could ask for a reasonable accommodation, which is either to not work near people who have COVID or an environment, work from home, figure out other assignments you can take that would not put you at risk. And that's called a reasonable accommodation under the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's just one example of how if someone has a reason that they can't be in that situation, they can work with their employer to figure out an answer.
Yeah, and I will reiterate that people should definitely be checking with their in-house counsel or their outside counsel before they make any moves on this front, just because so many different laws are triggered by various decisions made by businesses. So again, everything should be taken, as something to be considered, but we recommend that you check with your own legal counsel before you make any decisions.
Right. Employment law is the alphabet soup of laws. So you've got every letter represented by a statute. Title VII, OWBPA, ADA, ADEA. Anyway, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And thank you all for your time, and stay safe and healthy.
Thank you so much. Thank you all.
Thank you all
for joining us. And we will see you guys tomorrow or on Monday for our next webinar. Thank you, Ajay. Thank you, Therese. We really appreciate that extraordinarily insightful information. And hopefully we'll have you guys back on in another couple of weeks. And we can continue this conversation with more up-to-date information at that time as well.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Thank you. And everyone, congratulations to AJ. He just had a baby girl and we're super excited for him. So congratulations, AJ, on behalf of the
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a great weekend.